What's going on, everybody? Hip Paws here with another couple of cool little tricks for you guys. Let me just show you what I got going on first before I show you how I did it. These are pretty cool. Okay, you can see I basically got this spotlight that just kind of travels around in a circle, and that's a separate element from this other thing here, which is basically like a danger zone targeting thing that hits the ground, and when it times down it explodes. So boom, and you get a sound effect and a particle, and it does in fact kill you. So if I can make it in time, which I don't know if I can, there I go, I'm dead. Okay, now the other thing that happens is if this spotlight sees you, it's going to give you a message that says you were caught, and now it is following me. You can see that it's basically on me no matter where I go. I'm moving around here. Like, kind of hard to tell because I got a pretty blank map, but it is, as I jump around and move around, it's pretty much, it's stuck on me. And again, separate from that, can kill me. So how did I do this? Pretty easy. Okay, first thing, for the spotlight to actually trigger on you, I've got three elements here. I've got an actual spotlight, okay, which is just pretty much set to pretty far. If I look at the light components here, and I believe the radius, point light component radius is 6,000, so it goes pretty far. I think it is set to cast shadows, but it's not. It doesn't actually do it, so it doesn't really matter. Just turn that off. Doesn't make any difference. Still casts. I've got a trigger volume, which is based off of a cone. Now you can make the cone right here in the brushes. So however big you wanted your however wide you wanted it or whatever, you could just tune it. When I created it, I did it basically pointing, like everything was pointing straight down, so it was easy to line up. And then the other thing I've got is basically a static mesh. If I hit Control B here, which will bring up my content browser with that item selected, it's just a static mesh cone here, real simple, obviously nothing spectacular or anything like that. Now the material on this is actually blank, but I do have a material placed in the scene, and this is the material that I'm using. Now the UV coordinates for this object are as such, like that. So basically I just did a cylindrical unwrap on it so that it goes from the bottom to the top, and then I put the top of the cone at the top and I put the bottom of the cone at the bottom. But actually this, having the bottom face right here, was a mistake. I really need to get it like just kind of crunched down into the nothing so that it doesn't have any ability to come into the transparency, because if you actually look at it, you can at some point on here, I believe, see the back of it. You can see this hard edge right here. I don't know if that's actually it, but there is a I think it's just not going to show up because of the way that it's blending, but you can see that face and it sucks. So that's why I just moved it like too far into the ground so you wouldn't see it. But I just need to fix the UVs. It's not a big deal, and it's kind of beside the point. But the material for this is simple, not super simple, but texture coordinate. I just masked it to the G so that it was a vertical gradient. I had to flip it, so you just do 1 minus, which is here. You can just type in 1. There's 1 minus right there. I gave it a power so that it would crunch it. You can see that it goes from a very long gradient to a pretty much to halfway. And then I just added a really hot value here, which is 10, 8, and 6, which is pretty much like a yellow. And you can see that we get quite a bright bright look to the whole thing. And you can see here that it looks like, you know, pretty much like a static mesh. The other trick is not even a trick. Let me actually, I think a lot of that was off the screen, so let me shrink all this. Show that again. Texture coordinate mask with the G, 1 minus power of 5 multiplied by a hot value 10, 8, and 6. Added those together throughout the opacity, set the emissive to just straight to the hot value. And I need to come over here and check used with fog volumes. Okay, that's the important thing. I don't really even need to check anything, but I'll do it anyway. And then what you have to do to get it to look like this, so that when you look into it, like as you go into it, it's nice and bright. Okay, so it's not like edged or anything like that. It's nice and clean. Looks like a volumetric effect. You could, you know, I could have tried to use some kind of material trick on the thing, but a fog volume works nice. It is an interp actor with interpolation set to true, and what I've got in the world is this actor here, which is a fog volume constant density info. Now I moved it out of the way down below the ground, because really if I hit hidden here to true, it shouldn't be showing up, but it does anyway, so you have to hide it. But pretty much all you do is when you go to fog volume actors, just lock this, pick whatever mesh you want to actually be the fog object, and you can put it right here. Okay, then you can set your density, you can set the colors. I match the colors here, 10, 8, and 6, but the material pretty much kind of takes care of it. You also do need to drag the material, your fog volume material, to the object. Okay, and then you can set your density. So if I go like 0.001, you see it gets much dimmer, like that. Okay, if I just do 1, it's going to be uber bright. So you got pretty good control here. I think I settled on 0.001, so it was pretty obvious that it was there. So that's that. So then what I've got is each one of these two things, the interp actor with the fog volume material on it has an attachment of the spotlight, as does the trigger. Now the trigger is a dynamic trigger volume, okay, created off of a cone brush. So dynamic trigger is number 1. It's also attached to the spotlight movable, and its movement is set to interpolating, so it can move. Okay, so wherever the spotlight goes, the trigger is going to go, as will the mesh. Okay, and they're lined up so it looks right. Now what I've done is I've got these two actors here, which are just cubes. They're just simple cubes. There's nothing to them. If I take these and I unhide them, because I set them to hidden, let's move this guy back out of the way because it's just annoying. You'll see the simple movement that I gave it. Very, very simple. I didn't do anything to it. You can see that this object is just spinning around in a circle with Matinee. This object being attached to it is going around it like that. Okay, it'll keep going, as you can see, but the spotlight is now fixated on me and no longer on that object. So the kismet for that is simple. It's right here. You need a Matinee sequence. So what I do is, the first thing on level loaded is I tell this thing to spin around in a circle. This kismet tells this to spin around in a circle. So all I did, let me show this here, is take the, if you go here and you click the movement track, you can come down here and say show rotation on the editor curve, and it's the last 3. Okay, so it's XYZ for translation, then XYZ for rotation. So just in the Z here, you can see I've got a value at 5 seconds of 360. Okay, if I set the value, it's 360. I set the curve to linear, so you select them both, Control Alt, and just drag a box, and I set it to linear. And out here in the kismet it is set to looping, and I set it to half the speed. You can pretty much control that any way you want. So it plays that, so that spins around, and with this piece attached to it, that's just going to go around in a nice clean arcing circle. Okay. Then what I do is I have on the light, okay, if I click this keyframe here, it will highlight my spotlight. So if I move this out of the way, damn it, if I move this just to there, you can see that I got the spotlight movable selected, okay, and you can see that that's where my thing is. So in order to get this light to look at, now you can actually get anything to look at anything else, but you got to remember that its facing direction is down the X, just like a character. So if you wanted a mesh to face something, like constantly, like a turret or something to constantly face a person, just model it so that it's facing straight down the X, and that would be its pointing angle. But in this case, because I have the other things attached to it, I only needed to do the light. So what you do is you just add any group, and on the movement track you got to say look at group name, so you just give it that name, and you come over here to rotation mode, and it's usually set to, I think, a keyframed or something, but you set it to look at group, and then the name of this has to match the name of this. Now all this is with nothing selected, it's just an empty group. So I could just say, okay, create new empty group, and I could call this like target 2, and I hit OK. When I come out here to Kismet, you can see that I have a target 2 that I can feed it to, so it will look at that object. Whatever object is attached here is what it's going to look at. So this is set to just play rate 1, looping, so it constantly plays. So this spotlight is going to constantly look at this interp actor, which is actually this one here that's moving around. Then this one's attached to that. So it's just kind of a bit of a chain of things. So this rotates that, this looks at that, you know, go down the chain like that. You can do more dynamic movement, so it's a little bit more wavy by moving this in and out with its own matinee while it's attached. So the spotlight will go in and out. We do like a spirograph kind of thing. Anything you want for the animation, doesn't make a difference. And then all I got is a simple dynamic trigger volume touch that fires the caught you message here. Okay, you can see it just says caught you, and then what it does is it immediately stops the matinee for the target, for the spotlight going there, and 0.1 second later, 0.01 seconds later, it plays another matinee, which is the exact same thing. I just copied this, just copied it, and I replaced the target with the player, and that's it. That's all it takes. So now when I go in here, it's going to follow that object, and as soon as I get into that trigger volume, it will stop the look at for that object and turn the look at on for me. Now I could run a timer that has it go back to the other object. So let's try that just so you can see how all of this works. So I'm going to set this to, let's see, I could do it with my timer, or I could control it here. So like this is set to 5 seconds, right? So let's just take off looping, and when it's completed, we'll just replay this. So it'll stick on you for 5 seconds, and then should go back and play the other one. It should go back to following this other object. Now, the one thing that I wasn't sure how to do, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, there, and then it goes back. And then if it hits me again, it should do the same thing. Well, in this case, no, it didn't. And that might be because this needs to rewind on play. Okay, because when it played, it was already at the end. So that'll fix that. And let's just, so it's a little bit easier to test, we'll set this to like 2 seconds. And we'll hit play. Should stay on me for 2 seconds, and it should, see, 1, 2, and it should go back to the other object. Should do it again. 1, 2, go back to the other object. Okay, and then you can have anything happen. You could have alarms go off, bots spawn, trigger a whole entire level sequence for whatever you want to do. Okay, now the other thing that I got is this dynamic thing that's going around setting up the little kill area with a countdown and then an explosion. Now, I'm not going to show you guys how I did the flash, but basically it's just a progress bar that instead of scaling a bar horizontally or diagonally, or however you want to do it, vertically, it just scales it for a circle from the inside out. And what it does is, in the flash, when it gets to the bottom, it just triggers an event called fire. And this sequence is a little long, but it's pretty simple. You can see I've got bomb enabled, decal location, FX location. Let me change the color of this here. Just make it blue. And let's just make it white. Okay, so let's get in here. So on level loaded, we start. The delay is just a 1 second delay, and it's going to say that the bomb is enabled. Okay. What it's going to do is get location and rotation of this decal actor. Now the decal actor is here. The decal has a material that's using a render texture target that's piped to the flash. Okay. So what you can see is over here, when I actually get to the part where I open the movie, in this segment here I have it told to pick that render texture target, which is here. So if I just click on here, you can see I got my SWF, I got my material, and I've got my target. And the material simply has a sine wave on it to give it a little bit of a pulse. Alright, and I made it glow like hell. I just multiplied it by 500 so it's bright as poop, which poop's not very bright, and if it is, then you got problems. And that's really all that's in this package, as you can see. Okay, I got the cone and the fog material, and then I got the SWF, and this is completely separate from this, but this is all I needed for this. So that's where I open the movie. But the first thing I do is I get the actor location, okay, and I pipe it to a vector variable. Alright, so you can just right click here and say new vector variable. Alright, and then what I do is I do get vector components. Now that is here, new action math, get vector components. And what it'll do is take whatever vector you pipe into it, and it will split it out into its XYZ. Very, 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 very handy. Very handy. And then what I do, I name these, okay, X, Y, and Z. And what I do is this right here is a sequence variable random float. Now you can find that variable float random, and it gives you a minimum and maximum. Now I've set that to be -1000 and 1000. Okay. I've also, that's for the Y, okay, and I've done the same thing for the X. Now I could have piped this to the exact same variable since I gave them the same values, but in this case I just decided to give it a new variable so that if I were to not have like a perfectly square arena, I could make this, you know, if it was more rectangular, this could be -500 to 500 or whatever. And then what I do is you set vector components, and that's in the exact same spot, new action math. Let's see, let's do it up here, new action math, set vector components, and what that will do is that will combine the XYZ into a single vector variable. Okay, so as you can see, the XYZ goes to a new, it's the same name, but it now feeds that in. So what it does is sets it to a random. Now what I could do, now if this original location for the decal actor here actually happens to be, if I look, 0 and 0. Okay, so if your map was if this room was, you know, you went all this way and you got real far away and it was way over here, you wouldn't just do a straight set like this. Okay, this is actually just set variable sequence action set float. You can see new action. It's actually right here, set variable float, and that's all I did. You can see that's the exact same thing. Okay, what you would want to do would be new action, and I should do this here. Would be math add float instead, and you would say that A and B and like that. And in my case, I'll actually end up with pretty much the exact same thing because it's at 0, 0, 0 anyway, so setting it and adding to it isn't going to make any difference. So there's that. And then you do the same thing here for the X, okay? And then what I do is I set the components, so I take these split out X, Y, Z's, pump them back into the vector variable, so now these values got set in. Because remember, you don't have any access to the values here. Like if I do new variable vector here, you can do the stuff here, but how do you access the X, Y, Z to set them differently? If you wanted to add them up over time or do whatever you want, you have to get the components to get that, to split them out, okay? And then when you're done, you can now reset them back. So it's pretty handy. So then all I do is I set the decal's actor's location. Okay. Then I do a delay, and the delay right now is just actually no. I set the Z to be 0 after that because, as you can see, I've got a particle emitter here. Okay, I've also got a mesh. I had issues controlling the mesh. Let's take these things and just hide them real quick so that it's not so bright. Okay, so I got particle emitter. So this is, you can see that this is FX here, and this is FX location. Now FX location is this variable here, okay? So what I do is set the variable, because here's the thing. This was kind of the trick. The decal is up, is raised up, all right? But the particles are down. So I don't want to keep messing with grabbing too many locations that are all over the place. So I can basically just do a new set here. Okay, so after I set this and I set the actor location for the decal actor, okay, piped to this variable, this is at a Z of 290. Then I set Z to 0 right after that. I put a delay on it of 1 full second, and then I set the vector components again. Okay, because remember, I just replaced the Z. Now I set it again. Okay, and you notice I have two different variables here. It wouldn't have made a difference if I'd have made this decal location, because I would have replaced the Z. And then I set the actor location of the FX and of an actor sound, ambient sound movable object, which is somewhere in here. There's a sound actor I got. Yeah, it's right here. I hit it. Okay, so all this is an ambient sound movable, and you can find that in your content browser under actor classes. You just type in sound, okay, and it will be ambient sound movable. Okay, and you just add that to your scene and make sure that its movement is, actually it should be interpolating, but I don't think it really matters. Set that to interpolating. Okay, so I set both of these, one right after, basically at the same time. So I set the FX and I set the ambient, and these are in the exact same position as the decal, except the Z is at 0, so that they're right on the ground. Now if your ground is like a terrain or something, and it's real wavy, and you wanted it to be truly dynamic, you'd probably have to fire a vertical trace, get the distance, and subtract that from the distance of the decal to make sure that these are exactly on the ground. And then I also set the location of this fire wave, which is simply this object here. So if I think I need to click this. Does that grab the insert factor? If I hide everything but that, oops. I always hit this to hide, I don't know why. If I hide everything but that, this is just a mesh with a fire wavy type material on it. Okay, if I set this to there. I'm not going to go into how I made that. It's pretty simple. In order to get like a mesh, you can see how the fire, no matter where I'm looking at it, its movement is towards the center, like the fire is flowing towards the center, and it's not very good or anything like that. I didn't spend too much time on it. Basically, you kind of need to do like polar style coordinates. I'll just show you real quick, like how I made that. It's real simple. It's like if you take a like a plane in 3D Studio, you can see this is still the scene where I've got this. What you do is like if you wanted to do like a fire ring, you take a plane and you can say the number of segments here would be, let's say however many, let's say 32, and what I would do is set the length to like, I don't know, like 500 or something, and the width to like 50 or whatever. What you want to do is first align your pivot to, like Alt A will align in the Y only, the pivot to the like maximum right there, and then put it, I want to make sure I'm off of this first, and then just zero it out. And then what you do is unwrap this so that it is actually needs to be flipped. So if I look at a checker pattern here and I show the object, you can see that it's like that. Now if I take a if I take some of these faces here, you can see that they're going like that way. Now this is incorrect. You'd want to flip it like this, and you'd want to make sure that however you have the let's grab the points here. Well, your inside wants to be the bottom, so you notice that I've got it backwards, unless I bend it like a completely different way. In this case, I'd have to bend it around that way. So once you get that unwrapped, then you can just give it a bend and make the bend 360 and make sure that the direction is correct, which actually wants to be negative 360 because of the way I have it unwrapped. And now anything that pans from the bottom to the top is going to go from the inside to the outside all the way around, or outside to inside if you panned it down. So that's how you did it. And all I did was, instead of using a flat plane, I used a box and did a planar map. So if I look at the so if I actually look at the mesh here, select it and hit Control B, might be kind of hard to tell. It's not the greatest material or anything like that. I just gave it a little bit of a fatness around the end. So the profile for this would be kind of like a teardrop, you know, real flat, and then just kind of went around. And I really didn't need to do the bottom, but in case somebody was underneath it or something, you can see it there. Alright, now the material is a material instance. Okay, so if I pop this in and I come look here, you can see that my general material is real simple. I created a bunch of kind of interesting type textures, and it's got a second UV channel for the masking stuff. But basically, I mean, I'm pretty sure you, at this point, if you guys are at this point, you know how to do it. This pans, this rotates. This is actually set on coordinate index 1 instead of 0 because I gave it a second UV channel. So if I look at the mesh again here, and I look at the UV channels, you can see that's UV channel 1, but if I go to UV channel 0, it's the way that I was showing you guys, the way I did it the other way. But I also gave it another channel where I mapped it just straight down the top so I could do other, like, actual clean circular effects. Because one of the problems with doing the bend method is that your texture will have like it will be kind of resolute on how many segments and whatnot you have, so you will get your texture kind of hitting these stair steps and hitting these angles, and there's not a lot you can do about it. So if you wanted to change that, but like, it would be really hard to scale something from the inside to the out in this kind of UV unwrap. It's much easier to do it when the unwrap is like this and you use a panner. But you can combine the two to create cool effects, to get a clean circular opacity is what I was worried about. I didn't want the opacity to be all stair step looking. I wanted that to be a clean circle, and the texture for it is actually which I think I can find the texture here real quick. Let's go Control B, grab this, grab that, grab this. The texture is actually here. Now if I show this texture, if I pop this open, all I did was just put on various channels. Like on the red channel, I got a clean circle. You see there's no polygon faceting angles here because it's a Photoshop thing. Then I gave it like a wave thing so I could use that for like a bump offset distortion, and then just a fire texture that I found on the internets, and there is no actual alpha channel. But this could have been, just a simple cloud render. This could have been anything. All I did was do filter render clouds and then difference clouds, and then I did a wave on it, and then I did a polar coordinates. That's it. That's how I made that. So that's that. So that's just the materials for that. Now the actual, see, I keep losing what I'm at. I have parameters on here, just alpha. It's a default value, really high. Doesn't really make a difference. So I have an alpha channel. A parameter for the alpha channel, and I believe I have a parameter for the brightness too, so I can make it really bright. And it's set to 10, so it's pretty hot. And it all goes into the emissive, okay? And that's it. So that what I can do is I fire off a matinee sequence. Now if I look at this sequence and I actually play it, let's move this up. I hate how you can't like shrink things sometimes. I'll just move this out of the way. Get that into view. When I play this, it draw scale 3D. Okay, it's just a new float property track, and when you do that, pretty much that's like the only option anyway. You can't do any other properties. And then I do a material parameter track. Now when you do that, you have to target the material, so I put the instance in there, and you have to name the parameter brightness. I also have the one for alpha, but really I didn't need both of them. I just put it in there anyway, and it just ramps up, scales up. So as I get away, you can see as it scales up, it also fades out. So poof, poof, and that's it. And it's really fast. You can see that it's over the course of 1 second is the animation length, and I also made sure that the matinee is playing. I think I just kept it at 1 second. I tried messing with the play rate to make it faster, but it didn't look so good. The object also defaults right here to hidden. If I go to display, hidden is checked to true. And so what I do is I unhide it, play the animation, and when it's done, I hide it again. Okay, I play the sound. I turn on the FX. And I hide the decal at the moment that it fires off. Okay, so what happens is the FS command here is fire. Now the flash itself is set to fire it when it's done. So let me just show you the flash real quick. I'm not going to really go through it because it's going to take too long. Alright, so here's the flash, and you can see I've got like a thing here called timer ring, and when I look at the actions on that, it's just set it to visible as false. The main timeline actions have a few variables that I use. So if it's firing and hit go, grow speed, rotation speed, its final size, because you can make it bigger than 512, because that way I can have control over different different sizes. I can have a really huge one or a really small one. The max time gets defaulted to 0, and what happens is I set fire to max time, and when I do that, the very first thing I do is I set, basically I reset all my variables. Okay, so danger zone, its scale, which is the danger zone MC, is the crosshair part of it. So if I hide that, it's this piece here. You can see that's danger zone MZ. Okay, so then what I do is, first thing I do is I scale it out so that it kind of grows. So it doesn't just pop into place, it grows. So I do scale up interval, and I do a function called scale up. And when scale up, when I play that, okay, now it's on an interval at 33.33 because of 30 frames a second. I wanted to take 1 second. Okay, so 1 divided by 3 is pretty much 100 divided by 3 or whatever. So and then I scale it up over time. So basically it just says if it's less than my final size, which is I turned into a percent. Okay, so the scale divided by 512 would be that's the size of my movie. Okay, and then I just say, okay, grow up at grow speed, because I may want to slow that down. I may want to have it grow slower. I may want to have it grow faster. But in case 5 made it grow pretty quick, and then I say just keep going, and then I tell it to spin. It's spinning, and then I say that I am now ready to fire, which I just gave this command. I didn't need it. I didn't use it. But this would allow, I would now have a trigger event in Kismet if I wanted to for doing something different. And then I clear my interval, my scale up interval, so that I stop firing this function over time. And I call a new interval, which is going to be countdown. Okay. Now the countdown is basically the same exact thing. Okay. If the timer is less than or equal to 0, because what happens is, remember, it sets my max time here. Now I'm actually, when I fire this, I fire max time. Now if I show you here, after I open the movie, I invoke the action script fire, and I set it as an integer, and it's 3. So it's going to take 3 seconds to count down. So if I set this to 10, and I hit play, just take a second. Okay, I've started in the thing. I gotta wait for it to show up somewhere randomly. Okay, now watch. See, the countdown's taking a much longer time. And if I go inside of it, it says move away, and then boom. So it could be 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 second, half a second, however long you wanted that to be, depending on how difficult you wanted it or whatever, like that. But that parameter, basically max time, just sets the max time here. So you can see I did it 2 different ways. My global variable has the caps, okay, with the capital M and the capital T, and my past variable doesn't have the caps. Okay, so I set them both to max time. So at 10 seconds, timer and max time are now 10, right? Then I fire my scale up interval, and when that's done, it fires the countdown. So now countdown does all of this. It says, okay, if the timer is less than or equal to 0, which it's not because it's 10, okay, it goes here and it says, okay, well, I'm going to set my timer MC to visible true. Now the timer MC is that solid ring. So if I show this and hide this, if I click on that, you can see that that's timer MC. So that's that ring that shrinks down. Okay. So I set the visibility to true. I set the crosshair MC, which is the main one, to rotate. Now you see that it's danger zone / crosshair MC. Now if I don't do that, I get like this kind of jitter on the end. So like if I cut this out, Control X, and let's just set my debug to true, which just shows my buttons. You can see that when it comes up, I get this, like you can see that it's kind of wavy due to the resolution. It's like it's wibbly wobbly. So what I did was I split this movie clip into a couple of different pieces. So inside this movie clip, you can see I got 2 different layers, okay? And this object in this layer is called crosshair MC. So I only spin the crosshair, okay? So let me put that back here, okay? Oops, put that on the wrong side of the dot, didn't I? Okay, so crosshair, so that rotates, so now my edge is just nice and clean, and I subtract the amount of time. Okay, now I could have done basically it's divided by, you know, one second by the frame, right? So you gotta worry about milliseconds. And then what I do is I just set it to the timer divided by max time times 100, so it's a percentage. So if timer is, remember, timer is constantly counting down, so at 5 seconds, 5 divided by 10 is 0.5 times 100 is 50, so the scale is going to be 50. Remember, 100 scale is 100%. Okay, you can see here that it's not like on a 1 down to 0, it's 100 down to 0. Okay, so that's 100%. So then I keep scaling it down. Okay, once timer's all the way down, it says, okay, well, now the timer MC is visible as false. I just force my master object here, the bar MC thing, to be 0. I call external interface danger zone fire. Okay, now that is to trigger Unreal script. So if I give this to my programmer, he will now create a function for this if he was to do it here. FS command is for Kismet, so I just say if FS command fire is true, I set ready to true, I clear my interval so it stops firing this, and I say completed is true. Now these things I never actually ended up using, but they were just checks, just to make sure that I was going to be okay. I did it a couple different ways, and I just kind of didn't clean everything up. So that's the basics of a countdown bar. And what you do is you set the interval to be 33.33, okay, whenever you fire an interval, and that will time it so that it comes correct. Like because again, you gotta think about the math on 30 frames per second. So I got 30 times. It's going to happen 30 times in a second. So if I want something to happen over the course of 1 second, I need to fire it at 30 divided by 1, you know, that kind of thing, or 1 divided by 30, which ends up to be 33.3. That's why the set interval, this is the number of milliseconds. However many milliseconds is going to pass before it fires this again. If I set this to 1, like 1 right here, it's going to count down way too fast. I would need to compensate by making sure that my timer doesn't go. So everything's kind of on 0.33. I'm sure you guys can figure out the math. And here's the stupid set debug. It just sets the buttons to be visible or true or not. And when I set it to true, they're here. Now these buttons here, if I look, all it does is just say fire 10. It's the exact same thing. Okay. I also put some other ones here just to test some stuff, but I never ended up using it. And I believe that this is a reset MC here. So it always first resets. So if I hit play here, it will scale up and come down, and when it's done, again, this is happening every 30 times a second, and boom, it stops. And if I hit it again, it resets every time. So that way, you just make sure everything gets reset. So that's the flash, and that's the Scaleform. So I basically have it boiled all down to just firing one function, which is the fire function. Okay, and again, the fire function is here, which just resets everything, scales it up. When scale up is done, it stops itself, then starts a new sequence, which is countdown. Countdown just scales this thing down over time, okay, until the timer's out. And remember, whatever I said, if it was 30 seconds, it would be going down. Every 33 milliseconds, it's going to drop down 0.033 until it gets to 0. And then when it is at 0, it's basically going to say fire. And that's it. So the rest I controlled in Kismet. So you can see here that on my FS command, which is fire, okay, then I do this stuff. So I don't call that until I've set all of my actors' locations. Okay, so I set the fire wave location, I set the ambient movable location, the FX location, and I set the decal location. Okay, then when I'm done, I open the movie, I wait a 0.1 seconds, and I invoke the fire script with whatever value I want here. So if this was 35, 1, whatever I wanted that to be, and I immediately unhide. As soon as I've opened the movie, I unhide the decal so that it shows up. Now it's going to be wherever it is now. Wherever all these locations ended up being, it's going to appear here. All the other things are going to be there too. They're just not ready yet. So once it hits fire, it plays the sound, which is going to be at the location of this actor, and the sound is just something that I found in UDK, in UT. Okay, you can see a weapon shock rifle. If I play that, plays a explosion sound. Okay, I just found anything. I immediately unhide the fire wave and play its matinee. So that's going to scale that out and fade it down, and when it's done, it's just going to rehide it again, just to make sure, even though it would technically be hidden. This has rewind on play set to true, so that every time I hit play, it's going to start it from the beginning. Okay, so that's the fire wave there, kind of set by itself. I also close the movie so that the movie basically gets reset. Even though it is reset, I close it anyway. And then I set that the bomb is not enabled anymore. Okay, and the reason I do that is because I also have a dynamic trigger volume. Okay, now you can see that if I unhide here, you can see that that's here. Okay, now that is a, get out of the way, is a dynamic trigger volume. Now this too has the, well, I guess when you do set actor location, you don't need physics interpolating to be true. I think you only need that to be true if you want it to translate over time. But if you're just going to set it, it doesn't make a difference. So it also set that dynamic volumes location somewhere. I don't know where the hell I did that. Set actor location, decal actor. Set, I did it right up here. You can see here's the dynamic trigger volume. So pretty much at the same moment that it sets the decal, it sets the dynamic trigger volume. Okay, which has its pivot right there. So it actually ends up going at the height of the decal, but it still connects with you because it's not set to be forced overlap. So it still works. These things were basically fail tests. I tried to see how to turn I wanted to try seeing if you could have a volume that was off, and if you went into it and then it turned on while you were in it, like enabled itself while you were in it, if it would trigger, and it doesn't. Just keep that in mind. You have to actually pass into it. It can't just appear on you. Or it can't just activate on you. It can appear on you and work, but it won't turn on while you're in it and work. So as long as it's on when it moves to you by any method, any of the basically the three methods that are available to us. There's Matinee to actually move it around. There's set its location here, and then there's teleport. You can teleport it to the location of something else. As long as it's on when it comes to you, it will still work. But if it's off and you go in it, okay, so I already explained that. Alright, so what happens is when you touch it, you can see that is damage enabled. So when you go into this volume, it says it's true, and when you leave the volume, it's false. Okay, now what it does is it checks after you touch it, is the bomb enabled? Now the bomb is, remember, the bomb gets enabled at the start of this whole thing. Okay, so as long as you are, because the trigger volume doesn't disappear or turn off. It basically gets moved. Like say if this gets moved here, as soon as this happens, the trigger volume stays there. When the bomb goes off and everything's done, the trigger volume's still sitting there and it's waiting for the next move. So once it, but it's not going to do anything. This will actually be constantly happening, but I kind of probably should have put this in front of that, but it doesn't make a difference, because basically once you go in, if the bomb is enabled, then boom, it tells you move away. Now what it does is it checks if the damage is enabled. We modify the health to the player. Now I tried setting the velocity for the player and setting it to really high, like to 3000 in a Z magnitude, in a Z direction, and it didn't work. I don't know how to do that. So, but I put it on there anyway just to see if I could get it to work. And so basically, at the moment that it fires, if damage is enabled, which is because you're in the volume, boom, you're dead, and that's it. So yeah, that's basically how I did it. Again, I randomly move the decal. Once I'm done with that, I get all of its stuff. I could have skipped all of this stuff and said teleport, but I wanted to make sure that the heights and things were in this same general ratio, that the decal was raised, that the effects and the sounds and everything were on the ground. So I made sure of that, and then that's why I did it this way instead of just teleporting everything to the decal actor location, because it would put everything at the ground or put everything floating up in the air. The explosion would have started in the air, and the sound effect would be high up, and I didn't want that. So I could have teleported it and then moved it down, but I'd still have to get its position and split its vector and subtract however high it was, and all that stuff. So after that, so we get all the positions, and then we do our editing math, and then we set them all. And once that's all done, then we open the movie, and we unhide the decals so that the movie can play, and we fire the actual flash function to get it to do its little animation thing. Then the flash takes over, and when the flash gets to its moment of glory, it hits the, remember you got to pipe in the movie here, it says fire. Now here's a problem. If I have like multiples of these all over the place, I've got to be really I got to be kind of specific. Each one of these would have to set a certain, because the thing is if you have multiple copies of a flash and each one of those fires a remote event, they all will fire the same remote events, unless you were to tell Flash that it's a different event, so you could say in Flash, you could have variables here. So like, say I wanted to have like a maximum of like 5 of these that can appear on the screen at any one time. I would have to say, like, I'd have to say var, and I would say like, I don't know, like active bomb would be 0. And then what I would do is basically say I'd have to feed this value from Kismet to say, okay, my active bomb is this bomb, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when it's done, it would have to run a check here to say fire, and then it would be plus, active bomb, like that, so that it would be fire 1, fire 2, and I think you can do like I think you can force it to be a string. So it'd be like that. So that would actually fire the remote event fire 1. And then you could actually distinguish in here which one of these things would be. And you'd have to make a new one of these called fire 1 to fire the other particles. Okay, the other trigger volume and whatnot. You'd have to have 5 of all of these in order to get it to work. In order to have 5 of them active at the same time, you'd have to have 5 of them going. So that's it, basically. Hopefully you guys found that useful. This I just finished, just figured this out, and it came out to be quite simple, and I'm really happy about this this Lookat group, target stuff, and using Lookat group here, and being able to just add a group here and pipe in an object to it, because again, it works for It works for literally anything. Here, watch. I'll show you. I'll show you that one last time. Let's just pick a mesh. Let's go all assets and static meshes. And let's take this 747. Now you can see that this is backwards in the X. You see that? How the tail is going down the X. So the tail is what's going to be looking at me. But I'll add it. So I'll add as an interactor. Okay, so you can see here's this aeroplanio. And what I'll do is I'll just make a dupe of this. Boom, here. Everything's the same. And I'll hit play on it and play rate. And all I gotta do is punch that into here. And it should work. I think it might need to be interpolating. Yeah, look. No, it's not working. Hang on. Is its movement set to interpolating? It is. What is it set to look at? Should be the player. Oh, I gotta make sure that doesn't get played. Let's just uncheck some of this other stuff. Let's see if that did it. I hate it when I'm like, oh, look how easy it is now. Wait a minute, it's that easy. There we go. It kind of seemed like it was working for a second. Yeah, because look, it's flat. Oh, I know why. It's got to be looping and not rewind on play. Because it only played for a second. There we go. And it's looking at me. You can see the shadow change. Pretty cool. I'm really happy about that. I'm really pleased with this. That you can do this. It's a little jittery, but it's still very cool. This is how you can get a camera to look at stuff. Like it flips over. Kind of cool. Let's see if I fly here, it should still be working. Whoop, and it goes around. Now if I say take this object here and punch that in here, notice that I can't actually assign that. See how it doesn't work? I was like, oh crap, you can only do it to the player. That's garbage. No, just you gotta just add a new variable and pump it to that. And now you'll see that it's gonna follow that object. But that object's not spinning. It did look at it though. This is the one that spins it around. See? It's funny. Just I don't know. I don't know why I feel like it actually got a little bit of personality. It's like, hey, where are you going? It's trying to fart at it. That's my birthday, by the way, October 25th, if anybody wants to send me a happy birthday. So yeah, that's it, you know, and it's very cool. And again, you can definitely use this on lights and dynamic triggers and stuff like that to get spotlights that trigger stuff, which is kind of a staple. And if I stand right here when this goes off, caught you. Oh wait, I gotta move. I'm not gonna move. I'm gonna die. Alright, so HitPod's signing off, and I will be back with more stuff eventually.